Winston Peters, there are so many things to go over. Particularly, I want to go over your speech on Friday the 24th of March from Howick, in which you actually launched your campaign. And it's got some really important things for New Zealand. But first of all, I want to get some other more immediate issues out of the way. Marama Davidson, her behaviour, speaking about white men, we don't even know really what cis is. It's just one of those terms of art that these wokesters use. But saying white men are responsible for all the violence. She's the minister meant to be countering violence. What's your view of a woman like that being in Parliament and being allowed to remain in Parliament?
Look, no one excuses violence, but the falsity behind that statement is why she is not fit to be the minister she's meant to be in, the space of. She's talking about violence and denying that so much violence, and ask those in the Maori world and ask Maori women. And it's so regrettable, because in the Maori world we know that we needed a renaissance of husbands and wives and children are taonga, or treasures, so to speak. We get all that language, and then we get a person like Marama Davidson dumbing down with the greatest stupidity and making those appalling claims, and she should not be in her job.
There was a great violence in the way she actually dealt with the reporter who, in my opinion, was doing what reporters of old used to do before we had this collapsed mainstream media. She went up and asked some very valid questions. What did you think about what was going on in Albert Park? There was such an extreme arrogance in Davidson. Should she be stood down? Should she be turfed out of Parliament?
Well, of course she should be, but that's what Hipkins will not do. And he's been caught with the serious comparison between Nash's mistake, which it was, but there was nothing in what Nash said that he wasn't committed to in terms of the hundreds of thousands of businesses, or workers rather than businesses, who were going to go out of their job and livelihood during COVID. So Nash had a major problem to strive with. He made a mistake of, after the discussion, telling someone. And it's against the cabinet manual. But this dumping down on him, while it's this totally inexcusable behaviour and deceit and lies from Marama about the state of violence in this country, is excused by the Prime Minister, which tells me that neither of them are fit for their job.
And Hipkins has gone further, Winston. He has announced today that nobody should talk to counterspin or their like, which really does encompass anybody who doesn't agree with the mainstream political narrative. That is such egregious silencing of a very valid group of voices who are questioning the government, is it not?
Well, look, I don't side up with the media in this country in any form, because I've seen over 30 years a serious decay in the media. They have had a lack of space, they've had a lack of investment in terms of serious investigative journalism, and the quality of our fourth estate has suffered for it. But having said that, in this business, your job is to answer every question that's asked in a democratic society. You don't have options. You're not an autocrat, you're not a dictator, you're not a despot. Your job is to be held accountable. And remember, he was in the cabal that promised the most transparent government ever. How does that sound now?
And Counterspin has done good work, important investigative work. I am sick of them being labelled far right, or even me, conspiracy theorist. Show me the conspiracy. It is crucial that we are allowed to ask one another one's views without the labels, without the ad hominem attacks. Isn't that when a democracy dies? When one can't ask valid questions, have differing views without being labelled and derided?
But that's not what the real outcome here is. The outcome is to cancel you out of the environment.
Exactly.
So that your alternative argument from others prevails without any dispute or any resistance. This is the very essence of autocracy and despotism and dictatorship. And that's what they're actually allowing to happen. If they actually seriously understood it, they would realise that the response to something you don't like is to turn away and not listen.
Silence the voice.
You're not forced to listen, but they're forcing you they're forcing people to not hear an alternative point of view. What was the famous line in that song from Phil Collins? You've got to hear both sides of the story.
That's it.
Both sides of the story means you might find the truth, but today you've got editorialising posing as reportage and fact, and it's not. And our democracy is the worst for it.
And your comment then in that context on Posey Parker and what was done to her on Saturday?
Look, no one would have heard of Posey Parker if they had just left her alone, and those who wanted to hear her alone. There'd have been no publicity whatsoever, and not the debasement of our country's image abroad as being some sort of fascist outfit. All this happened because some people decided in a country that's been a democracy since 1854, they were going to take away one of the principles of democracy, free speech, and we'll do it whether you like it or not. And they're screaming out their virtue and saying, what a marvellous job we did. And the first people who will suffer from that will be them in the long term, the very people that impose those rules. Because someone will disagree with them shortly and cancel them out.
And remember, their argument was, we've always been so hard done by. We've never been listened to. We've never been honoured. And then they did the same. Yeah. They became what they protest about.
Well, as I say, there have been times in the past where others, me included, didn't agree with something, so I didn't go to the meeting, and I just didn't give it the oxygen of respectability. If that's what their view was, fine. But no, they said, despite that you are legitimately in this country, passing all the visa requirements, even though we don't disagree with it, and even though we've lost in the court, as they did, just before she arrived, we nevertheless are going to impose our minority rule on the mass majority.
I need in that context also, Winston, to ask your views on the politicians and the press, the mainstream press, who really beat up the story this time a week ago. She shouldn't be coming, said Chris Hipkins. I don't agree with her coming, really inflaming a situation. Would you agree with that?
I agree that his statements are utterly wrong. We have laws with criteria to enforce, and when those laws on application to her, by her to come to this country, were enforced on the basis, yes, she is entitled to come, the Prime Minister should have kept his mouth shut. Now, he is actually talking about a case coming before the court before it got to court. It was effectively sub judice. See what's wrong here? No one's called him out on that, because too many people in the media are utterly, sadly biased, and their profession's the worst for it. And their long-term livelihood will be destroyed in time by what they've done thus far. To be good, they have to be an independent fourth estate, not a bunch of fifth columnists.
Dan Wotton in GB News this has gone around the world with opprobrium heaped upon New Zealand. What a ghastly little country is the main message. Dan Wotton did a very moving piece to camera saying, I have dual citizenship, I'm working in the UK, I always thought I'd retire to New Zealand. I don't want to go back there. I am so saddened what has happened to this country that was so special in my childhood. This is how people are seeing us overseas, Winston.
Yeah, but my message to Dan is, Dan, if enough people take that view, your country's finished. You, Dan, have to get yourself organised and make a commitment to turn this country back to the democracy it once was. Some of us are doing it, and Dan, you should as well.
It's not easy, Winston. I got beaten up for doing that. I got assaulted at an airport. I have had endless invective, and I really feel for you. You've gone through, how many years in politics have you been now? The insults.
45 years in politics.
And so many of those interviews I remember from my time in mainstream media were deriding of you.
But I remember.
But you always stayed.
Well, I remember all the attacks. I remember the wine box, the BNZ, Mary Loans affair, a stack of things where I was ridiculed and castigated, Cinderella-ised and marginalised by the media, but who won in the end in terms of the cases. And then the last great one was the absolute vicious attack by the serious fraud officer who lost twice in 2020 and in 2022 in July the 22nd. And I didn't see anyone in the media saying, also he was right then.
Never.
See what I mean?
Never.
That is called bias.
Many people say we are as corrupt in our part of the world as Ukraine is up there. There is a lot of corruption in Ukraine. It's being used by the big powers as a sort of pawn. Is New Zealand awash with corruption in a similar way?
Oh, no, look, as a former Prime Minister, I don't quite agree with you on Ukraine. Ukraine has been a democracy for less than 30 years, and give people a chance to actually adapt and perfect their democracy. I know it's not perfect, and I don't really want to be part of this this be part of my argument here. And I've been to Ukraine. I was one of the few, probably the only foreign ministers ever been there, to Kiev and see my colleague a long time ago. And I've got, great hopes for them because they're a food bowl of the world. And as a result of this, millions of people are going to be starving as a consequence. I'm telling you, this is how serious it is. But back to...
I was pointing to the corruptions of the big powers trying to play their games within a country.
Oh, I see,
I think we have that in New Zealand. I think we have overseas influence. We don't quite know what that is corrupting this country, and there are corrupt Kiwis willing to go along with it.
But that is true. That is true, but they, to be fair, could not have come upon a more willing bunch of corruptees, so to speak, who take this mantra that they're right and everybody else is wrong, that everything's the fault of colonialism, which is absolutely astonishingly stupid, or everything's the problem or the fault of the white people, which is utterly stupid, given that most of them got more white in them than Maori.
I want to get into that in your speech.
I talk about the DNA. Which part of your DNA, this person who's talking like that, which part of your DNA with so much English in you, or Scottish or Irish in you, which part of your DNA is going to compensate the other half? Riddle me that. Answer that question.
Before we move into the richness of this speech, which includes that, I want you to tell me what you would say to Marama Davidson and her arrogance if you were Prime Minister. Would you call her in and say what? What salutary remarks could you give this young whippersnapper? Because that's all she is politically compared with your experience. What would you say to her?
Well, I'll begin by saying, Marama, that's the reason why, since your party was formed in 1972, first under the name of Values, in 51 years, none of your party has ever been inside the cabinet room as a cabinet minister.
Absolutely.
You've been outside a cabinet. 51 years and never actually getting to be making the decisions. But that is unacceptable, and let me make it very, very clear, if you will not stand down, that I intend to sack you, and that will take the consequences, because I don't need your vote. I've got enough majority to carry on until October the 14th, but I'm going to set a standard right here, right now.
That would be excellent if Hipkins would do that. And let's then...
Well, good luck with that, because it's not going to happen, but that's what it would take.
Yeah, that's leadership. But let's move on to Nash, which he couldn't do anything but get rid of him from his portfolios, given what had gone on. A really deep concern that's being mildly alluded to in the mainstream media is that this came to light, it was done in March 2020, I think. It came to light in March 2021 under an OIA request, which tells us that under the former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, somebody, although of course they're all running for cover saying she didn't know, her chief of staff didn't know, somebody in the Prime Minister's office knew, and it was covered up. What do we do with that sort of corruption?
Well, how convenient. This is what the Prime Minister claimed when she said she didn't know about Hey Pua, the report that was denied to me.
Absolutely.
Remember that? You got these people having a go at me now saying you did know, and I'm saying, this is ridiculous. You can't even follow the logic or the chronology. But here's the point. The Prime Minister used that statement then, and I said, when she said that, if that's true, Prime Minister, Mahuta should be sacked tomorrow. And if it's true, if it's not true, that she did show it to you, then you just lied. You can't have it both ways. And here we go. Now they're saying, oh, we got it, and we didn't give it to the Prime Minister. Then those staff members who did that, withheld it from the Prime Minister, should be immediately sacked.
Absolutely.
Because
named and sacked.
That's what being the most transparent government ever means. But I'm saying to the media, stop mollycoddling the issue, stop flanning us. It's clear as daylight if you ask any logical questions, and politics is about asking good questions and don't leave off. You would know the truth, and it's staring you in the eye.
What was her reply back then about He Puapua with sack Mahuta, or else somebody's lying? What was her reply?
Now, that's what I put to the media. I've never heard a reply yet, and I don't expect to get one. But it's all the evidence I know, because Willie Jackson said, no, we never gave it to Winston. Guess what he would have done with it? Because it was a racist document.
It's just appalling what has happened to this country. Before we leave Nash, 3 years ago, he also betrayed you with some information about cameras on boats, didn't he? Nash has a record of this.
Oh, look, in a way, he made a statement which is true, but it's also a truth that survived long after I was out of cabinet. So here we go to 21, 22. Are the cameras on boats? No. Because the thing what we raised at the time is, at 51,000 plus for most fishermen, that's the end of their business. They can't afford the camera. So
the government could subsidise.
Yeah. You've got to step up and start subsidising them to it, and you'll get the outcome. And fishermen will go along with you. But they can't afford 51,000 just like that.
Would you undertake to do that? Were you in the government again to subsidise?
Look, I'd rather sit down and analyse the problem again into the future. But as someone who saw fishing families all over this country, which was destroyed by the Labour Party under Longy when they privatised fishing rights, the destruction of so many hundreds of fishing families all over this country, many Maori, happened right there, right then. The first asset sales of this country under the Rogernomics was fishing rights, just like that. But back to my point. And so I was seeing it then and now and saying, you've got to fix up the cost thing. We weren't against it. We were trying to get the economics fitted up so that people in fishing could go on doing their job responsibly and not go broke.
I know that Legacy has a lot of followers. Are you aware of Legacy? Legasea?
Yes.
And they really want those cameras on boats to stop the corruption. They would be willing to work with you if you would be willing to work with them on that. But
long as they recognise, I know something about some organisations, and I'm not a person who can be bought. I will follow anybody's logic and sense, but I want to make sure that this thing stacks up. In the end, politics is about accountability to the very people that it affects, namely the people in the business, the people who are workers, and the public, not just lobby groups. And that's where this thing started. But just come back to Stuart Nash.
Can I just finish that? They're lobbying for small fishermen. What if Tallies came and offered you millions for your campaign?
Well, I've been going for 30 years and never have they?
Well, what about free
fish? No.
Winston?
After 30 years, and of this never happened, I kind of think the fourth decade is not likely to happen. So why do people ask a question like that?
Well, it's the question so many are asking, especially after Nash. How many of these lobbyists
most businessmen,
are governing
most businessmen,
representatives?
Most businessmen, with some exceptions, have given me a microlight and expected me to fly to the moon. I've never forgotten that. That's the reason why in election after election, which party declares the least expenditure? And honestly, we do. But we still put up with these vicious allegations that are utterly false and dirt. And you can bet as we rise in the polls from here on, the dirt will start over again. This time, they're not going to get away with it. We'll do something about them.
Let's get on to your speech. I think it's an excellent speech. The real state of the nation. March the 24th, St Andrew's Church, Howick. Let's begin with New Zealand's GDP in the last measured quarter declined 0.6%. And you say, that means our economy is not growing, it's shrinking. The worst balance of payment figures since 1989. So what is the purport of that? We are spending a lot more than we are earning.
Well, you've got a whole lot of people out saying we aren't doing so bad. That's a shocking statement to make. We are doing bad, real bad, against our past record. Our economy is shrinking, our economy is in recession, although you get half the economists don't realise that we're in that or not. No, we are in recession, and the real thing is that we can't pay our way. We have got the worst balance of payments in 34 years. That's money we're spending against money we're earning. It is just amazing that that is not seen as a crisis point, because it has a certain image about it. This could get much, much worse. That's the point. Worse. And I do not see any plans to rapidly grow our wealth, add value, and maximise our resilience. And resilience is not about this buzzword that you hear so many politicians use. It's the resilience that was born of a previous time under Labour and National going back decades and decades ago, where if we could make it, we did.
And you say a wonderful thing in your speech. You actually say that in previous parties, in previous eras, when either of those parties made mistakes, they would go and look at their mistakes and try to do better.
Yeah.
Why has that animus gone? Now it's just how can we spin it more? How can we lie more? How can our bureaucrats cover up more? People are so disillusioned with politicians now in New Zealand.
Well, I was in the cabinet and I saw it emerging in the COVID era on the part of some people who were in that cabinet, including the Prime Minister of that time. I remember very acutely, not because I was there, but because I read it, The famous Roosevelt during the New Deal in America, coming after the Great Depression, addressing the issues of people in their millions being out of work and homeless and all the poverty and degradation, saying we're going to do this and this and this. But we're going to make some mistakes, but we'll keep on trying. We'll keep on trying to improve it. I didn't see that in that cabinet I was in. They were saying, but I wasn't, but they were saying, we're the podium of truth.
Yes.
We know with absolute certainty what we're talking about. We know that this is right and that's wrong, and they didn't. And that was a sad thing, because I thought, there's Roosevelt. He would have said, please don't do that. Tell people you're going to make mistakes, they'll understand. They'll believe you. But what we've got now is people being shut down, mandated out of work. People like Professor Gorman, who were saying, hang on, this science is not there. You will not know that with acuity and certainty and fact. Just being marginalised. Shocking.
Are you saying you're rethinking the safety of those and efficacy of those vaccines now?
No, I've never stopped thinking about it. I am triple vaxxed. But I came from a background where my predecessors, my father's generation, were dying 9-1 against Europeans during the Spanish flu. This is panic time. Within 4 years of that, and this is an amazing thing, it's 1924, almost 100 years ago, there is a Maori whose head is the minister and head of the New Zealand health system, and he brought vaccines back then.
His name?
His name was Maui Pomare. 100 years ago. You see my point? He brought modern medicines to Maori. But the point was, there are always possible side effects. Every specialist will tell you when you go for an operation. But when it came to COVID and the vaccine, they denied it. That's the part where you recall, as things went on, especially after we were talking about it, there was a huge gap when we didn't have the vaccine. We never got the vaccine, till when? Right into 2021. Remember that? No, it's gone by then.
Are you aware that there was a drop of the Pfizer documents that were not meant to be released for 75 years, which showed 1,400 possible side effects in tiny writing over about 10 pages? That has not been publicised anywhere in our mainstream.
I wasn't in cabinet when those documents came because I was out of cabinet by then.
Yes.
But I am aware that all those writers being put on, and a lot of even officials were saying, you've got to read these writers to the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, and she and her team preferred to ignore it. Now, worse than that, they withheld that information from the New Zealand people. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm anti the argument of absolute certainty that people say this is safe for everyone when it is not.
Exactly.
Second point is, you should have the right to decide whether you take it or not.
Those words will
just
be
those
music
two things
to New Zealanders' ears. And the third thing, Winston, is in terms of that vaccine, it has become very clear now that Pfizer never tested whether it would actually stop transmission. So when we were being told over and over it's safe and effective, let's leave safe to one side, effective, it never was what Jacinda Ardern claimed. And what we need to establish again is, did she know, as she was telling us over and over from that podium, it was effective? And we've seen that in the results. Most people have had a dose of this. It hasn't stopped.
But Liz, you've got to be fair. I don't think Pfizer ever made that claim. Dr. Fauci did, Jacinda Ardern did, but Pfizer never made that claim.
Were you in the Prime Minister's seat? Had you been there? Would you have got up day after day knowing that there weren't tests done and said it's effective to stop transmission?
Well, I'd have read. Well, of course I wouldn't have, because I'd have read the caveats
there,
and all the writers saying but, and that might sound what it is, but that, as we now know, those caveats and writers were being provided to the Prime Minister's office by officials saying, but you have to mention this, what you have to have reference to this, and she did not. That's it. This is the absolutism, where someone says, this is the podium of truth. What an extraordinary statement to make. Imagine if Winston Peters said that.
And
the outcry.
Imagine when Liz Gunn questioned that early on, and I'm labelled a conspiracy theorist for questioning something from doing the research, and millions of others.
Well, if you can't answer the question, victimise the questioner.
That's it.
You know,
ad
it goes.
hominem attack.
Yeah.
Let's move back to your speech. It aligns perfectly. Since this COVID rollout particularly, you say, never can one remember a time when things are falling everywhere all at once and people know things aren't working. You go on to say, let's contemplate how exactly we got into this predicament. It did not happen overnight and we are at an inflection point. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I meant was, you just can't just blame this Labour government for some of the things that have happened here. And I go on to say, there was a crisis in the educational system before 2017. There was a crisis in housing. There was a crisis in policing, law and order. We had then catch and warn. Catch and warn. Today it's become catch and release under the present administration.
Or not catch.
Or not catch at all. You know, we had ram rates going up 465% last year, and ministers on TV saying that it's going down. So what I was really saying is, it is fashionable in politics is to blame the other side, but I said, look, in some of these issues, this has crept up. Own the fact, because the last thing we want in 2023 is it's our turn now for the change of government when you've got no idea what you're going to do to fix it up.
I really appreciated that line. This line, there are people campaigning for this election with only one naked policy, quote, it's our turn now.
Yeah.
Surely you are asking the question, this is to your audience, your turn to do exactly what? And this lines up with something you say towards the end, which I found extremely powerful. You say, send out a message today, unmistakable, uncompromising. We know, we are aware of the plans and purposes of others. And then you say, we know of their secret agenda. When Kiwis now are researching and looking at the larger picture, they're saying, as in America, it looks like you toss the ball over to the other side. It's the same government with a different colour, a different flag, a different maybe mantra, but they're doing the same things. Is that where we are politically? They really are the one party now.
Well, sadly, we are in a very difficult predicament, and that is that the Labour and National Party will be disappointed to hear this, but they're too much alike.
Far too much.
Who's standing up for Western values, for democracy, for freedom, all those critical things? Well, none of them are. And it's been an alarming development here, because what we're being told is everything about the society and the rule of law and the democracy that you've got and brought to this country is wrong. And we're going to change it. And we're going to change it whether New Zealanders like it or not, even though we're only a handful. And the mass majority can be ignored. That's what's going on here. And so this is you'll hear politicians saying, this is going to be a very critical election. Well, for one of the fewest times in my life, and probably the only time in my life, this is it. This is an inflection point. If we don't turn this around, then our country has got imitators in the past who've had that failure. You heard about Venezuela, most successful economy in South America, gone, collapsed. It happens like lightning when people don't make a stand.
This is really powerful stuff. And you know, I realized this a year ago, they were the same party when I went out to Botany and interviewed people who were formerly absolute National Party loyalists. They said, we are all without a party now. A number of them had lined up for nearly a year to try to get a small interview with Luxon. When they finally did, they had 20 minutes. He sighed, looked at his watch, said he was too busy with the economy and looking at other things to talk to his own voters. The arrogance, as if the script is already written.
Well, look, I'm not trying to knock the guy, because I see everybody knocking him. I'm not trying to knock him at all and anything else. But all I'm saying is, I remember an era and read about it as a student and a political science and history graduate, of an era when the Labour Party had a huge sense of nationalism. The Labour Party of the 35 to 49, they did all these things believing in their country, and their country was second to none in their view. And the National Party inherited that era and adopted it and called it a property-owning democracy. But those two parties at that point in time were serious nationalists with a capital N. These people today are globalists.
Absolutely.
And everything they image is about the globe, and this is the reason why, in all their thinking, their citizens come second.
There are those who say beyond the globalism, Winston, there's a sort of Marxist ideology, that idea that you bring a country to its knees, you break it financially, societally, you divide it, and in all the mayhem and the chaos, often Marxism comes in post-war, but in the mayhem and chaos, you come in and say, we've got the answer. We'll give you the central bank digital currency, we'll give you a universal basic income, but there will be all these controls that come with it, as with Marxism, a failed ideology the world over. Could that be plausible, that these people are actually seeking to go against the very interests of the people they are meant to represent? They've been voted in by both parties, National and Labour.
If you're saying that this theory, that is Marxist as well, and also has other variations of that, has a design to kick out the legs of the respectable table of democracy and law and order, then you're right. And if you're saying that the people they're using are willing, unaware, sadly, and uninformed puppets, you're right also.
Interesting. Winston, we are in a parlous state in this country. Let's keep going. I really want to work through this. You say if we do not work together, if we continue these numerous divisions, we will be doomed to repeat the failures of the last few years. I find it fascinating how you sum up New Zealanders, the mass majority of Kiwis. How do you see Kiwis?
Oh, that's the amazing thing. I saw it, I've seen it so much in my life. We got all these people pronouncing on high, you've got editorial writers writing editorials about this, that and the other thing, then there's the real world out there. It was, I used the example in there of the women's rugby team with a shocking recent record coming into the World Cup, things look hopeless, and because they did a honest assessment of their plight, they put the best mix together, Pacific Maori, European players, male and female, mainly male head coaches and what have you, and turned it around and won. And I saw it in Cyclone Gabriel. They weren't standing around saying, I'm not helping that guy because he's white, or I'm not helping him because he's Maori. All flat out, some putting their lives at risk to help out. That's what the politicians of this country need to understand. And a whole lot of commentators and self-appointed experts need to grasp sometime for the first time in their life.
Very powerful words. And you say here also the mass majority of New Zealanders are conservatives with a sense of humanity. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
We believe in giving our neighbour a helping hand when that neighbour's in trouble. And we want our hard-earned taxes spent on those issues which we believe in. There's a line you use here that I used in the first love letter. These politicians are our servants, Winston, aren't they? They are not our masters.
I've got no idea of your love letter, but all I know is that is axiomatic in a democracy.
And it has become the other way around. Someone said, with all of these cameras going up, have you noticed all the surveillance cameras going up during the lockdown? Someone said to me, we, the people, should know everything about those we vote in, and they should know almost nothing about us. And that's been tipped on its head. Yeah.
Well, that's true, but see, so many surveillance cameras are for security, for evidence. Our society has become lawless. And there's so many cases where that image of who was there leads to conviction. And there's one thing, the number one obligation of any politician in this country is the safety and security of people in their homes and on the street. That's the number one obligation. And it's not happening. People feel terrorised.
I don't know that surveillance is the answer, because we've had a safe society earlier without all of this sense of Big Brother watching us.
Well, we had surveillance in the sense we had cops on the beat.
Let's get back to that.
That's walking surveillance. Sorry, surveillance is important. And then we had mum and dad or grandfather saying to somebody, look, whisper over here, but I think something's going on over there.
Have you read the lead story of the Herald today, that police are using facial recognition technology without all of the checks and balances in place? Absolute open to abuse. And I've just experienced police overreach.
Yes, look, I haven't read the Herald, the main lead story this morning. I've heard a rumour about it, but I'll get around to reading it.
Can you answer that though?
I have a very busy day.
Are you concerned about police overreach? You and Sue Gray were the only two political figures in the landscape currently in New Zealand who reached out to me when I was abused in an absolutely unwarranted way for standing in an airport with a camera for a non-commercial operation.
Yeah, but I called you because I suspected immediately this is a breach of the law, not on your part, but on the part of the law of the on the part of the authorities.
Absolutely.
And they will use the taxpayers' money to defend them while you use your money trying to get justice. That's how it goes. I've been through that. I mean, a lot of court cases where that's exactly what happens. And when it's Avenue 1, people say, oh, congratulations, you did this. And I think, yeah, but what about the 2.5, 3 years and the hundreds of thousands of dollars it cost?
Absolutely.
To get there. That's how it
Halfway
goes,
through, they said, we can let this go, we can drop it if you'll admit you did something wrong. And I looked at them and said, you know I did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And I thought of all the others this will happen to. There are grave overreaches by the police at the moment, Winston. Does it worry you?
Look, I support the police. I'm the one that led the party to get 1,800 extra frontline men and women to police our streets, and frontline I call them. But also I am a lawyer that supports the rule of law, and then everybody, no matter who they are, including the police, are subject to it.
That is the key. And we need to get that balance right, because I think since March the 2nd last year, there's been a sort of unspoken imprimatur. If the police want to bash people up, we'll let you get away with it. Again, a weak government allowing.
But you take those riots. You take the riots in Parliament. They would have never happened if all those political parties in Parliament last year hadn't signed a stupid, undemocratic pact to not talk to the protesters. That riot would have never happened. The police would have never been put in that invidious situation. It should never happen. Blame the politicians who wouldn't talk to them. Blame Jacinda Ardern and the whole lot, and including, Luxon, Seymour and the whole lot. Why would you not talk to these people? Because if you had, they'd have dissipated and gone home.
Absolute. Chloe Swarbrick, the whole lot. I don't think any of that 120 should get in again. Cost of living. Let's go back to that, because there's a whole section in your speech on that. Inflation is continuing to climb, you write, and we are facing a recession. Many countries are doing far better. So you talk about the absolute, again, lackluster response from Wellington. You say no inquiry into banking charges which benefit foreign banks, no inquiry into supermarket costs, no inquiry into energy costs, just more promises and more borrow and spend.
Yes.
They seem so utterly incompetent to me now, Labour. Do they to you?
Yeah, but it's not just Labour. I mean, you've got politicians who are too scared to do something for their country. Here you have Australian-owned banks subject to 5 full-scale inquiries in Canberra, their capital, in Australia, into Aussie banks. Aussie banks in New Zealand doing far more, making far more profits out of us than they are out of Aussies back home, like, some sort of out-of-control Ned Kelly. And you've got politicians here too gutless to have an investigation into them.
What do we need in terms of banking? Do we need a people's bank? Do we really need to get rid of these Australian-owned banks that are leeching us?
Well, we can't get rid of them like they are the country.
We can if people turn their backs on them.
Yeah, yes, but you know something. The Bank of New Zealand was sold by the National Party to NAB Australia on 1 October 1992. And now I know it's a history lesson. When it had in our banking, 6 out of 10 New Zealand customers were the BNZ. Jim Bolger and the National Party, who had by that time expelled me, did that. And our commitment at the time was to investigate the bank and find out what had gone on. So that's what happened. And now you're saying to me, we can get rid of them. No, it's very hard to do that. But what you can do is say, there are rules here, and if you want to be a banker here, you're going to abide by them. You're not going to screw New Zealanders.
Jim Bolger, it's interesting, he's making a lot of noises as he rapidly approaches the last years.
Well, can I just tell you an amazing thing? Helen Clark gets in 1999 with Jim Anderton. Jim Anderton wanted to start Kiwi Bank. That's now a new New Zealand bank, very small, very under-invested in it, but nevertheless they started. And to Shaft National, they make Jim Bolger the head of it. Remember that?
I do.
Well, I'll give a quick memory lesson. So Jim's giving his first speech accepting the post as the head of Kiwi Bank, and he said this, and I thought, somebody should shoot me here. He said, I've always believed that New Zealanders should own their own bank.
He's a man rather that reminds me of Seymour, talks up both sides of his mouth, but as he approaches the last years of his life, I think his Catholicism is pricking at his conscience. I think there are things he wants to put right that he knows he put wrong. And there must be many politicians in that boat, Winston. I wonder that Helen Clark's conscience doesn't sometimes prick at her.
Oh, I can't mention that. I can't say that. All I do know is that Jim Bolger chaired a cabinet where there was a raging row about neoliberalism and Rogernomics. And he took the Rogernomics or neoliberalist side. But all these years later, he's now saying he was wrong. He disowns it now.
Very much.
And I ask, and I think to myself, well, why do we have all those rows then? Because I've never been a neoliberal. I'm a responsible conservatism. I believe conservatism is the best way of organising human lives, but it must have a responsible human face, and that's what that speech was about.
And you believe in a nationalism for this country
Yes, I do,
that is healthy rather than selling us off to the globalists. All right, so you say about middle income earners and seniors, both groups having so little disposable income. And then you add they're really going after seniors. Labour, Greens, National and ACT have all stated they will vote to increase the retirement age. What do we do about our poor middle income earners who are just being leached all ways? Can we reform the tax system in a way that is so simple if a group of good Kiwis could get in?
Yeah, you can do a lot of things, but the first thing you've got to do is address their number one problem. It's like saying, look, I know you've got a bit of a flood going on over here, but the left-hand side of your house is burning down, but I'll tend to the flood first. I don't think so. In this case here, the cost of living is what is squeezing people to the nth degree. And I see people, and in their minds and in their eyes, I can tell you how hard it is because I've seen that poverty in past life when it's stoic, it's difficult. But back then there was something different. Back then, we knew that the government knew what it was doing and tomorrow would be better. We had the number one thing called hope. And it was worth having hope because next year it was better and better and better and better. Now it's getting worse and worse and worse. That means now you're going to have serious psychological depression in this country and people are going to be hard up and not being able to afford the most rudimentary of things. That's what's coming.
I cannot pass that statement without alluding to the horrors of Hawke's Bay. We have so many good Kiwis from all over the country taking spades and gumboots and just going to help. And the reports I get over and over, there's no government presence. There's virtually no army presence or navy presence. They're invisible and large tracts are being left. Someone said to me, Hipkins was caught whispering under his breath, oh, it's all going to be red, stick it anyway. And it's looking to some as if it's going to be an illicit form of land grab. They'll red sticker it out under the aegis of climate change, fill us with fear and say we can't do anything. People want to clear that land, their orchards. It's their land and rebuild and not be bullied out by the government. What would you do, Winston?
Well, be careful. In 1938, Esk Valley was flooding like it flooded the other day. Almost as bad. Christchurch, when the people settled Christchurch, in the areas where all that earthquake and damage happened, no Maori ever lived. Why? Because they'd seen it before. Now, we cannot ignore the lessons of the past, but our job is to take those circumstances and rebuild people's lives as fast as possible. And what I fear for the people of the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, dare say in West Auckland and elsewhere, is that they will be marginalised in their focus for a rat race to the election and beyond. And so we'll have what happened in Christchurch. Christchurch is still not rebuilt.
It's appalling.
Yes, see what I mean? Well, we can't afford that to be the case. You look at countries like Korea, Japan, whatever, 2 years later it's all fixed. Here, nothing.
Nothing.
You know?
And it's the same parallel with those who are jab injured. We've now got 65,000, for example, jab injured on the MedSafe website, unacknowledged by this government, the highest number we've ever seen. We've got the same thing, a government refusing to really go in and help those damaged in the floods.
Yeah.
And we've got, meantime, propaganda rolling out about wonderful 15-minute cities. Winston, do you want to live where you can move only in a radius of 15 minutes around your house? Do you want that for New Zealand? Is that the New Zealand we've had?
Well, I got a better question.
Dreams for?
I got a better question. Ask Mary and Joe Bloggs or Hone or Hene out there if that's what they want. Because they've never been asked, they've never been consulted.
Never.
Nobody gives a rat's about their lives, and they're the people who are, in this election, as I say, the master.
But what happens if you get in and the World Economic Forum, which is really a round table writ large, a big, a big pressure group with a lot of very wealthy people. Hey, Winston, you just have to do it this way if you want IMF money and you want UN support, and we've got some big ideas for New Zealand. We've got a lot of wealthy Americans there who want.
There's
what would you say to
there's
them?
no Klaus Schwab or anybody else who remotely thinks that they'll ever have a say over what Winston Peters thinks. Now, you know that, so why are you asking that question?
I will actually frame that reply. I love that reply. Education, you talk about literacy and numeracy rates continuing to decline. The National Party really tried to take this on and say we need the 3 Rs. And you do allude here to the horrific, many parents are contacting me about the horrific gender ideology that's being taught to very young children. Bathrooms not being boys and girls, so their kids don't want to go to the bathroom. It is horrendous how quickly this has been rolled out with no voice of the parents in there. Where do you stand on all of that?
Well, I stand as a former teacher, both primary and secondary. So, and from a family with 2 headmasters and a training college head, I've got some experience in education and interested in education because I've always had it as part of my key political goals, in that there was a time when all you need with workers is their hands. Now you need these, but flexible, trained minds. If you haven't got that, your economy hasn't got a chance of being in the first world. That's why education is important, if not for the matter of love and affection for children, so to speak. But the real point is, we need to get back to some fundamentals of good education. I want to know why we went from being in the top 2 or 3 in the world in all these academic achievements to heading towards 53 in some of them. And I want to know who were these tinkerers that changed everything. For example, you got open plan today. That's 75 or 80 kids in a room. And some kids can't get by because there's too much noise. You've got 3 classes going on there. And there's even been suggestions, well, they should be wearing earmuffs if they can't get on with the job. Now, if they've got earmuffs on, how can they hear the teacher? You see the ridiculous statements are being made? So this open plan idea, and I see so many teachers, tell you the truth, I know a lot of teachers who are hard up against it because the demands being made of them from all sorts of areas means they can't do their jobs. So let's get back to the fundamental job they should be doing, which is not building up people's ego and esteem, but building up their tools to get ego and esteem and social ability as they go older.
There are also stories coming to me of teachers who were mandated out because of the forced jab, pressured and ostracized still within schools. They've had to go back to resume their careers.
Well, as I said in my speech, how come we got 50,000 stadiums at entertainment or sport full, no requirements at all, and that's lawful, and what you say going on? How do you reconcile those two?
And we need the teachers. So I really do love the way you term some of this. You say, our education system has been the victim of numerous virtue signalling tinkerers. You referred to that just now. They would now rather teach a young child virtuous self-identity theory than basic maths and English. Our system should be fundamentally focused on education, not, this line is great, not using our children in some sort of woke social re-engineering program for vulnerable, undeveloped minds. And when were they allowed to decide that parents' views don't matter, you ask? It's extraordinary. What would you do? How would you get the wokeism out? What do we do with all these mindless bureaucrats who are pushing through legislation that we can't even keep up with now? And with this ideology, this kind of Marxist ideology.
Well, the brief answer is to say that the people don't want your ideas, they don't want your social re-engineering, and they don't want you unless you're prepared to reform yourself, so go and get another job.
Well, we don't want to pay them out of contracts. I've had an idea. What if you put them all with a spade and gumboots to go and dig up Esk Valley and then get some good people in there, Winston?
Well, now, just to be honest with you, the industrial laws of this country don't permit you to do a thing like that. You might have other politicians agree, but we've got to play by the law.
I like the idea of them contributing a constructive something. Employment, it's also a very good section in your speech. You say this Labour government has allowed 50,000 more New Zealanders to depend on the job seeker benefit at a time when employers are crying out for workers. You see signs in all the cafes now. What do we do about that?
But you see, what on earth is this job seeker benefit when 50,000 more people are on it? And I saw the Minister, Carmel Sepuloni, on television the other day trying to explain it away, and I thought, what's going on here? Can't this journalist see what's going on? They're hiding unemployment in a different name.
Absolutely.
And then saying the figures of unemployment have gone down. This all happened in the space of 2 paragraphs of that interview. Right? No.
This is the result of propaganda. Do you know what they did with suicide? They hid suicide because
yes.
they reframed it as accidental death.
Yes.
Put it in there.
Yes.
Everything has been about propaganda under Labour.
Well, but what's worse than that? Look, worse than that. Here, who would announce a program of zero suicides? Jacinda Ardern did. Who would announce a program of 0 deaths on our roads? Well, Jacinda Ardern and Labour Party did. Here's my point here. Roading with the best of all, I think even in Nirvana or even in heaven there'll be a chance that the car breaks down and goes off the road. So 0 is just impossible. But no, this media commentariat is so woke that they accepted it as a legitimate target.
It's
astonishing.
Who announced zero COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors with this government. But what you say here is very sad. The job seeker benefit is loaded with school leavers with low levels of education and no work experience. And then you refer to Germany and Taiwan.
Yes.
What is it about them? What would you bring in from that example?
Well, you know, I've been to both countries and I saw things quite stunning. I saw what they were doing. They were not streaming young students off early, but students at 13 or 14 who clearly wanted to go one direction, they would stream off early. And it looked like whether Taiwan had grabbed it from Germany or Germany had grabbed it from Taiwan, but I think Taiwan had grabbed it from Germany. And you had students making lathes by the time they were 16 years of age, making this Ford equipment, marvellous stuff, because, you know, this is a population that's the second highest density to Bangladesh, Taiwan, and it's a world economic leader with no resources at all. And so we should be listening here, and what I was saying there is that we need to get as many of these young people off what they're doing at the moment, back through apprenticeships into work, get them a start, because without work, you know, you can see what their long-term future will be.
Here's a really interesting side note to that. I wonder if we should really decrease this or somehow change our universities, which seem to be brainwashing centres now. I remember I was in the last years at law school under Professor Northey, who'd been there for years. And he still was lamenting the fact that young lawyers didn't go out into the workplace during the day and study law at night. He said that made fine lawyers rather than full-time law at university, and then you really go out knowing nothing. Is there a different way to construct our universities so this ideological sort of fallen lack of independent critical thought can be stamped out through perhaps a kind of apprenticeship of each degree? As you do the degree, you work in the area.
Bluntly, yes. It's called public funding. Stick to the script that we've asked you to do, educate our people in a balanced and fair way, or we'll find another university to fund. We
must teach the Socratic method that you question. Good. Okay.
That's one thing that Jeffrey Palmer and I agreed on.
There's a lot about Jeffrey Palmer coming up now in terms of constitutional changes. A lot of people talking about him. Let's go to health, though. You say almost 70,000 New Zealanders have been waiting over 4 months for treatment, or even worse, for a first specialist appointment to examine their condition. 70,000. And there are fewer elective surgeries than before 2020, you add. What, in your view, is happening in our health system, or our sickness industry, some call it?
Well, first of all, you've got a Labour Party making all sorts of promises about health, and they've had ministers of health, including Hipkins himself, and they've failed to deliver the number one thing, sound health policy with adequate resources. They've done anything but that. Here we go. Mental health, 1.9 billion. We're going to go to road to zero, no suicides. Mental health, 1.9 billion, 5 beds. This is calamitous. This is just unbelievable. This is a lot of money. And then you've got all these other areas, and you've got massive shortages in doctors, emergency people, nurses, specialists, anaesthetists, all the people you want. And St. John's Ambulance is banked up down the road because they can't admit the patient until the patient's found an empty bed. All in the same crisis point, and not enough investment. And just to make sure they're totally stuffed, they mandated a whole lot of specialists out of work.
A whole lot of nurses.
And doctors.
Midwives.
That's my point. Just to make sure you totally stuff everything, you do that. And then you go offshore, you spend millions of dollars to try and get nurses in from overseas, and you get 19 visa nurses into the country. What do you think of that? Yeah.
Wasteful process. Yeah. And on top of that, Winston, the therapeutic goods bill, which says, I mean, I spent 2 hours yesterday, I have had nerve damage from that police up my neck, 2 hours with an osteopath. She helped more than anybody I've seen. And that would be limited under, those sorts of accesses would be limited. They're trying to steer New Zealand into one. Look, I cut to the chase.
I cut to the chase. I stopped that when I was the foreign minister. When Alexander down in Australia tried me to agree to the Australian plan. This is 2005, 2008. I stopped it then. I've stopped it all my political career because I think there should be alternative and better systems of medicine.
That's brilliant.
That's my position.
What else would you do then to help with the mainstream, this forcing of pharmaceuticals? What if we have this World Health pandemic that Ashley Bloomfield is now working on with the World Health Organization? What will happen in the next pandemic? And many Kiwis, cynically or not, are saying it's a plandemic. It's being planned. Bloomfield is at the heart of it. And many do not like that man either. So what would you do if that was then an came in, another rollout of more jabs? These are the safe ones. What do we do in that case as an independent country, Winston?
You know something? There were a lot of comments being made when Bloomfield was standing next to the Prime Minister, which on his body language, he clearly didn't agree with. You should I'm sorry, I'm sure he did pay attention. I watched people's body language, and I thought, I bet he can't believe that. He's a trained specialist. Now, that's my point. I'm not going to dump all over people. We were trying to, at the time, when I was anyway, we saw this potential Spanish flu all coming again, all through our country, and we didn't know what we were dealing with, and we didn't have anything to handle it with. And by the time that vaccine arrived, I was not even in politics any longer. But my point really is here, modern medicine has meant that we've gone from living average 35 years of life to, in some countries, 85 to 95. And on last Sunday, I went to a woman's birthday. She turned 100. Betty out there in Rama. And it was a marvellous event. You see what I mean? So don't knock all medicine, for goodness sake. It's got us there.
It has its limited place.
But I know. But all decent specialists tell you what the limitations are. When it came to COVID, the Labour Party insisted upon that they knew there were all the answers and that there were no limitations. That's what's wrong.
And we had doctors who had the courage to question.
Being
kicked out by the medical council, like Joan Simeon, which relates back to the Federation of State Medical Boards in America, a very dark organisation. So we have this kind of
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Well, when I find conspirators, I go out and try and nail them. And I spent a lot of my time, my career doing it.
And had you been standing next to Ardern and you had felt uncomfortable, unlike Bloomfield or Bloomfield as he's called, you probably would have spoken up. He did not. And that is to his shame. Well, if you look uncomfortable, speak out. Isn't that the rule?
Well, the problem is, you're right and yet you're wrong in this context. He is meant to be taken as the head of the health department. He's meant to be giving over the advice to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister is meant to be doing all this press stuff, I suppose. When you say that, no, I think, well, he could have said this, Prime Minister, if you keep on saying that and I don't agree with it, I'm going to resign.
That's it.
That's what you've got to do.
That's what so many Kiwis could have done. The doctors who didn't feel comfortable with the Baby Will case, we heard 50-50 in Starship. Many doctors and nurses were uncomfortable with what they did to their family. They didn't speak out. They didn't resign their pay packets.
But Liz, the fate of a whistleblower in this country, and I know it personally, or someone who says I disagree. I was in a caucus and said, this Minister of Finance plan is disastrous for our country. I got sacked from the caucus for that. And I resigned from Parliament to get a new mandate. It's highly expensive and it's costly. But worse still, you have so many people who think that is showboating.
Can we protect our...
See what I mean?
I do. You've been through it countless times. Look at the wine box inquiry. You got a terrible time for that and it was all proven true. Can we protect whistleblowers? Can we encourage the truth to come forward and honour them through a media that is more honourable?
Well, that's a fascinating question, and that should be a great policy that we develop coming into the future, because I've seen whistleblowers who did the right thing by their country and by their people being absolutely pilloried and destroyed. And it's wrong, it's bad for a nation, because the best information is what you want. And so if somebody's got it but too scared to say it because he loses his or her job, and they've got mortgages and they've got family, you see the contest or the challenge, the conflict they're facing, and they should not have to face that.
And getting bullied by a venal little mainstream media that really goes after.
Yeah.
If you want to know that, I think the high point of courage is Edward Snowden. If you haven't read his book, it's extraordinary. And what did Obama do? Go after him. But he has been warning this world and did it with such courage.
Yeah.
So whistleblowing is crucial. All right, our health, what do we do? All this money? I would ask you today if you would, at some point in your process through this electioneering, if you would meet Casey Hodgkinson, 23, one of the first jab injured, still in a wheelchair, cannot get ACC, and her equivalent out in Mangere, Rob Martin, most beautiful man, a health worker who was in the first wave, horrifically neurologically damaged, both of them, by the jab. Casey, last time she went to a hospital, was shaken by a doctor who said, stop acting. The horrors of what they've done to keep up the pretense and not acknowledge, the horrors of ACC refusing to hear them, would make you weep. And I think it will open you up to these jab-injured Kiwis need acknowledgement, they need love, they need support financially. The acknowledgement is what they long for. Winston, would you do that? Would you come with me and meet them? Or I can bring them to you.
Well, you're asking me, will I talk to someone who you believe has a legitimate ACC case?
Yes.
You show me what their argument is, and I'll certainly look at it with open eyes, because frankly, there are too many people in this country who should be getting ACC, who on purpose to cut down the tail of costs going forward in the future with false economics are being denied it.
I cannot tell you what that means.
Right?
The
That's
number of
what's happening,
times I have interviewed these people and they just want someone to see them. I'll follow that up. What would you do financially? We need not to pour money into big pharma endlessly unless we're getting results. You've acknowledged we need a wide range of options. If we had a World Health pandemic, could we say, we're okay in New Zealand, we'll do the big pharma, we'll offer the jabs, we've got other options, we're not going to mandate and bully and coerce our people? Would you be willing to stand up to the Gates-funded World Health Organization and say that, Winston?
Oh, look, I'm not persuaded by international organisations coming from afar with a taxpayer exempt purpose, which is what I'm talking about exactly.
Making a lot.
I'm interested in the facts and people's right to make a choice. I'm not going to make commitments on something that I do not intend to, how shall I say, listen to in the first place coming forward. I have never taken the view that things coming internationally means that they must be right. Quite the contrary. I've done my best to take my informations from all sorts of people, to hear both sides of the story, to ask the number one thing that's absent in politics. Ask good questions and never stop asking them. When you get there, you might get some sound answers. But I just saw today 5 options for crossing the harbour bridge here in Auckland announced. 5 separate options. What sort of shambolic policy planning is that? So what are you getting? Oh, well, you Auckland citizens, you 1.2 million New Zealanders, you got 1 of 5, take a pick. It's throwing a dart at the policy dartboard, you see what I mean? And so I won't make commitments going forward other than say I stick to what I've done in a long career, that without being immodest, there is no one who's been to the wire on issues to do with the public interest that have been withheld and not disclosed than I have, and I'm proud of that.
You have
It's kept me going all these years, you know.
No one can deny your long lineage here and what you've done. I think the climate change one is really important. I would like to also look at crime. Climate change, a lot of people are wondering, is climate change COVID 2.0? In other words, is it a reason for the government to roll out things that are rushed through? This piece of legislation, a climate change emergency bill that was given only 24 hours for people to lodge their wish for consultation with the people. Things are being rushed through, and it looks as if this government then wants to say we need what? Lockdowns, we need coerce policies, we need to force the people. A lot of Kiwis are saying this is rubbish. Slow down, stop bullying the farmers, listen to the people, discuss the ideas. Do we all buy into climate change? Winston, I want to look after Mother Earth, the seas, the water, the land, but I don't want to do it the Agenda 2030 way, the World Economic Forum way. Where do you stand on this fear-mongering that's taken off in worldwide media?
When we left being in government, and I was Deputy Prime Minister, the farming community had signed up to the plan we had.
Which was?
Well, we had the consultations. It was get things underway and ensure that you've got your carbon emissions at a level to meet all the international targets by 2050, right? And that we would have certain support mechanisms going in, ones that would be new, to use new science to change, for example, the food going into the animals with respect to the emissions from animals in this country, and plans like that there. And also one that was critical that we were going to press on with in future politics, and it's this. If we are going to get our emissions at the right level, we're not going to be paying for emissions credits offshore like 16 billion to some other economy. That's fatally stupid. We need to ensure that 16 billion is spent inside our economy so it regenerates wealth and progress and advancement as well, whilst we get on top of the problem. You get my point?
What about our farmlands being bought up by overseas companies and these beautiful, rich, food-producing lands being put into pine trees that acidify the soil?
No, that would stop. That would stop, because it's got to be right tree for the right place. And we haven't got that right at this point in time, and we can get it right very, very quickly. We're not going to let our country become sort of some sequestration land bank for offshore tax interests.
That's exactly what it is now. These voracious companies gobbling up land for these horrible pine plantations that are ruining the earth. But what if it is all a myth, as the myth was your health will come at the point of a needle for COVID? That was a myth. What if carbon is an essential for our earth, for our plants? They drink up carbon. What if the whole thing is built on faulty thinking? Are you willing to go back to the drawing board and say, wait a minute, has this been pushed on us from, again, overseas, thinking from think tanks, and it could be wrong? What if in New Zealand we look at different ways to look after our earth and we pull back from all of these group thinks and these meetings? I love the way they fly to Davos in their private jets en masse to save the planet. There is a certain level of hypocrisy we all see.
The last one in Glasgow, what a farce that was.
What a farce.
I mean, Greta Thunberg was right as blah, 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 blah.
And laughing, because she knows knows the right.
But my point is, look, the second thing is, I am utterly against those who think that information or ideas or research internationally is therefore suspect. We will advance this world by picking up best information, best research from all around the country. I can recall way back when Kalisa virus was released to try and get rid of rabbits in this country, and I thought, gee, I've heard of it jumping the species in China, and I did a lot of work to try and find out. This is way back 1991. That's a long time ago. And so you use the best internationally. But the real thing is, it's, as a famous economist says, when the evidence changes, I change my mind. What do you do? So I'm waiting for all the evidence at the same time. Bearing in mind, this is one sort of caveat on that. If your international competitors are trying to squeeze you out of the market so you can go broke, then sometimes you've got to get yourself in front of the problem. And I think we can.
I think my alternate caveat would be watch being herded within New Zealand and from outside New Zealand.
That's all right, but still, our job as political leaders, if we have got any leadership quality, is to get in front of the problem. Can't sit around waiting. Because public out there working 16 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week, expecting, I'm busy doing this, so-and-so, or Winston, and I want you to solve this over here.
Do you feel very sorry for our farmers under Labour? They have been burdened with so many more rules and regulations. I mean, I can't look at any area of New Zealand without seeing state overreach.
Well, before you say that, they're not in place yet. That's number one.
They're having to clean up along.
Yes.
Well, enormous amounts. Some families are saying that could cost us $1 million. We'll sell the farm.
But my point about that is they should be incentivized to do that.
Not
Then they would do
punished.
it. Look, I see so many farmers who are right ahead of the curve. They've got all the fences, all their creeks cut off. They've got all the things going on, just like they have in Scandinavia, where you will not get near a river because it'll be tree-lined everywhere before you get there. They're getting in front of it, but they cannot do it on their simple earnings. If you want that, you're going to have to incentivize it or assist them to do it.
And honour our farmers,
Yeah.
look after our farmers.
Well, look,
do
I got to tell you, I
that
come off of dairy farm.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time milking cows when I was from 4 years of age. When some people wouldn't know, 14 years of age, what a cow was.
Do you know that in New Zealand we have those beautiful long grasses and flaxes
Yeah.
that will be filters into the rivers? Rather than have these expensive fences, we could incentivize to plant those flaxes, and by the time the water seeps through, it's in a pristine state. We have a natural answer to that, but we're burdening.
Why do you think we've got an embassy for the first time ever since I was Foreign Minister in Scandinavia? It's because they are light years ahead of us when it comes to climate matters and cleanliness and what have you. They are light years ahead of us in terms of their annual incomes per person. And I convinced Helen Clark, if they're that good and they're so good in terms of the environment, maybe we've got things to learn from them. And she agreed. That's why we've got an embassy there.
What about immigration, Winston? It's not mentioned in here, and I was a bit surprised because I remember your courage years ago saying, we are being slated as having enormous numbers of people coming from Asia. Is that what New Zealand wants? And I remember the outcry then. Oh, you're being a racist. That's through
Yes.
the media.
Yes, right.
And I thought even then that's a really valid debate, Winston's promulgated.
Well, look, there are a whole lot of highly educated knuckleheads in this country.
Yes.
Truly, highly educated knuckleheads that don't know what that all means because they don't seem to understand. Yes, I'm not saying I'm anti-immigrant. I'm saying I want an immigrant here that we need, not who needs us. And secondly, that immigrant is entitled, if we're to blend this person into our society, then they're entitled to housing, education, schooling, and medicine, and also public transport. You've got no utilities for them. And yet you're bringing them in this country, and then you've got a huge competition between the new demands from immigrants with the old people unhoused and uneducated and untreated in their health system. See the problem here now? But they never think before they write this stuff sometimes. But look at this, just offshore in Australia in the last 2 years, they've taken on 700,000 immigrants in the last 2 years. And they've got a crisis on their hands in terms of all the things that I've said. Housing supply? No. The stress and the competition in housing supply is exacerbating so much of parts of urban Australia today. And all the things we said about the supply of the things that an immigrant is entitled to have, they're seeing those stresses now in Australia. And that's what we live through to ourselves. How come we've got a housing problem today that's so dramatic we can't get on top of it? Wholesale immigration brought that about.
900,000 plus under John Key in 9 years.
That's right.
Appalling, with no consultation with us.
He had no idea.
And we have no idea what Labour's bringing in, but I can tell you I've moved south of Auckland. To get back to the city in decent time, I need to be up at 4:30. By 6 o'clock, the southern motorway out by Takanini is chocker. It can be a car park.
Well, the reason why I haven't mentioned it,
where are all these people coming from?
Well,
Where?
the reason why I haven't mentioned immigration is because we went into an election and we made it very clear what the targets were going to be. But then with COVID, it ceased to be a problem. Or it was a suspended problem. But all the residual costs of that being unfocused are still there. And you have so many people who are too scared to admit it because they think somehow you're being unsympathetic to immigrants. It couldn't be less true. I went to, on the weekend as well, I went to an event celebrating one of our finest immigrants who died a year ago. But one of our finest immigrants became got knighted, because there have been some great immigration in this country, but it's all about proper planning and focus.
It's too much, too fast. But I agree, one of my best friends is a Tibetan doctor. What a wonderful asset to this country. A Kiwi Chinese is another dear friend. These are people who've been given time to integrate, to understand. When you flood a country, it loses its, and I think they're doing that on purpose, it loses some part of its national
Well, you know what the purpose is, don't you?
Well, I think
The
it's
purpose-
to water down the Kiwi spirit.
No, well, no. Well, that could be, but I wouldn't. think that's the answer. The answer is to try and artificially inflate demand, to inflate consumption. And it's always short term. Yes, there'll be a lift in the economy, there'll be a lift in GDP, and there'll be a long-term cost upon which you can never hope to succeed. And that's what's happening now.
So what would you do, Winston, again, in that prime ministerial seat? What would you
I'd have a focused immigration policy where you seriously target, first of all, the training and education and placement of New Zealanders before anyone else. And then you find the gaps, which we've always had. Even in the low immigration days, we always had gaps. Then you target those gaps to be filled internationally.
And carefully, there was a story in this morning's newspaper saying that there are people coming from India who've paid $40,000 in corruption money to come in, and their CVs do not at all tell the truth of who they are. And we are being used. The government is not checking properly. So this is, again, lax government, isn't it?
Do you remember when I made allegations that a whole lot of people from Bangladesh had come to this country under false pretenses?
Yes.
And all the allegations that were made, and 2,600 shot through to Australia, and the evidence was all in front of the immigration department. They never had the brains to work it out. They had their university qualifications printed on technology that didn't exist when they qualified. It was that simple to catch them. But I took a lot of allegations then about attacking immigrants, and I was right. Not long after they shot through to Australia, the Australians closed down our 100 years of access. See the consequences of this sort of thing? But no one takes consequences for their bloated, arrogant, stupid arguments on the way through that have failed, and then we get that sort of outcome. It was Hawke and Howard. No, sorry, it was Howard and Helen Clark. And Helen Clark had to face Howard, and Howard said, "This is over. Our access now, your access, the special group of Anzac mates, is just changed."
Well, I want to talk there about this Anzac relationship with the 501s, because I interviewed a 501 who was such a decent guy. He'd been stuck in long-term lockdown over in Australia. He didn't want to come home. His base was there. He'd got all the boys up doing exercise and basketball and teaching them, how to handle a tyre hire and lots of good things. And he said, "Liz, we are not all thugs. We are not all criminals. We've made mistakes, definitely. But we could rebuild if we could get into this country we don't even know, New Zealand, and have some help. But we all land there and there's no help, and we're despised. So what can we do about this gang problem? Let's move into crime before we finish. The gang problem and the desperation has just been such an ignorance, because the Australians are kicking out the 501s, bringing them back here, and there's no love or help. Nobody thrives without help or support.
Look, if you're a gang thug, you're not going to get any help from me.
Well, I think you...
No, let me tell you. You're not going to go out there, put Maori people on television night after night and shame us all who've got a Maori background. So you ain't getting any help from me. But if you're someone that went there at 2, 3 or 4 years of age, then you should not be repatriated back to New Zealand, because the impression and change and influence on your life was not a New Zealand one, it was an Australian one.
Exactly.
That's what's unfair.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to stand around when I see the kind of mayhem, dirt, filth, drug selling and purveying amongst Maori youth, and the contaminating of Maori youth, where they're forced to form crimes to become members, to commit crimes to become members of the gang. Don't think they're going to get any sympathy from us, but we make it very clear after selection. We're going to get you a job, we're going to get you some training, but you aren't going on any law break anymore, running amok in this country. That's our position.
But I like that. You're saying, here's the line, here's the boundary, we will give you something.
Well, we'll give you a way out, but we're not mucking around here.
And at the moment, we don't give a way out.
No, you don't. No,
we say go to crime because that's your only option, because you'll be ostracised.
Yeah.
Well, that's at least something. Our crime stats. I made a call after this assault by the police. I felt that after much, the second Andrew Costa last year, Andrew Costa should have been stood down. I still believe that. I think we need a new head of police who is uncorruptible. But you are saying here, anybody who attacks, what do you say here? Anybody, if you assault a first responder, police officer, paramedic, firefighter or corrections officer in the course of their duty, an automatic 6-month minimum mandatory prison sentence. I think that's fair enough. If the police
No. I said, if you're a gang member, That's the other part you missed out.
If you commit a crime and part of a gang.
A part of a gang, yeah, bang, you're going to be 6 months minimum.
But what if a police officer assaults New Zealanders, as we saw on March the 2nd last year?
Well, obviously, but look, obviously I didn't address that in the speech.
No.
I only have 45 minutes, if you don't mind, all right?
But we need
so you can ask
standards.
You can ask 1,000 hypotheticals, but I'm dealing with this one here, and that's why I knew that you'd missed some part out.
Do you think
I write my own speeches, right?
I noticed. Do you think that there is some corruption in the New Zealand police force? I worry about.
Well, sadly, there's always corruption in nearly every outfit. Sadly, you want to keep it to a minimum, but frequently there is corruption. No one will deny it, and I don't think the police would deny it either.
What do we do about it?
Well, you've got to eliminate it as much as you possibly can.
How?
Well, by constant vigilance and alertness and fair transparency of process, you'll get to eliminate it. But sadly, it's in a number of institutions in our country. I don't want to offend everybody now, but I've seen it. Where I've seen decisions being made and I thought that cannot possibly rationally be what is fair and reasonable and even within the law, or where you've got choice, which is the right choice. And then you think, this pure bias has brought this about.
Well, even if we look past March the 2nd, 2022, with that terrible brutality by the police that was then sanctioned by the mainstream media and by our Gunn, even if we look past that, let's look at Costa and Nash being in touch. So we've got an equation there. We've got one of them gone. Shouldn't Costa also have known not to be in touch with the minister? Shouldn't he, as the head of police, be stood down equally like Nash?
Look, the fact is that Stuart Nash should not have asked Costa the question, but the real issue that I would think about is, it is so bad that why did Nash have to ask the question in the first place? There should have been an appeal, full stop. So Nash is saying, you're going to appeal this, aren't you? Now, Costa didn't pot him, but what happened was Nash went and volunteered that information later on as to what he said to him. And even though Nash is wrong, the point is, why did Nash have to ask the most obvious question that's screaming out for an answer? You're going to appeal this anyway. And they didn't.
I have so many stories of police brutality, Winston, from the last year. So many stories that will need to be looked into. Would you be willing to hold an inquiry into the police if you were voted in?
I'm not going to make policy on the hoof. And no, certainly not doing a half-hour interview.
We need desperately a police...
Well, whatever you think, but I'm not going to make policy on the hoof. I've got 6 months to get it out there every day. We're working on new policy. Would I have it taken on an advisement to consider it? Yes, I will. But I'm not going to make policy statements like some and never deliver.
I would beg you to look at banning the hold the police did on me for no reason, the arms right behind the back. We saw it in March the 2nd, hands up here. It almost dislocated the shoulder. It is absolutely brutal. It's been banned in most states in Australia, and our police should not be doing it to anybody, let alone a 63-year-old woman. It was just appalling that they did that. And it was crucial that I recognised how brutish it is.
Have you got a video of that?
No, because the camera flew across the room and smashed.
But was there no camera inside there?
We've got somebody who did half of it as we were being led away. I think people were in shock. It happened within 10 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got...
Are you looking for a good lawyer?
Are you offering? I'll take you up on that. Co-governance, I think. I said we'd end with crime, but I think co-governance we must deal with.
Please.
You say Labour may now be furiously trying to put co-governance on the back burner, but they, and sadly too many even in National, still believe in it. Tell us about the tenets of co-governance being based on a lie. You articulate that well in your speech.
Well, the tenets of co-governance are that this country is governed by the Treaty of Waitangi being a partnership. And that means a partnership means equal partnership. Equal partnership means equal in number. That means 50% of the country should be controlled by Maori. That's what their arguments are in a nutshell. Right? Now, first of all, as I say in my speech, if no one was in the British Empire on the 5th of February 1840 in partnership with Queen Victoria, how come the Maori people were 2 days later? And it's a lie then and it's a lie now. They were not. And my evidence is up in Ngata, the finest Maori leader there was in politics, and also who got a degree in 2 years. That's how bright he was. He is right. He wrote a thesis on this which supports which is my view and which supports what I'm saying here. And what they're trying to do it for is that you've got a small group of elitist Maori trying to use the great number of Maori to get themselves in an elitist position. I say in this speech, they're of the people. That's their people, the Maori people. They're of the people, but they're not for them.
They're not for them.
That's my point.
What was at the heart of Apirana Ngāta's thesis? Tell us about that.
Well, that we did cede sovereignty. That the sovereignty went to the Crown. The Crown, of course, under which we all are here, and that's our democracy today. That's what he said then, that's what we are now.
So
they're trying to deny that now. They're saying, oh, we didn't cede sovereignty. And I was in an argument on just recently last week with some journalists, and they said, but Treaty Waitangi Tribunal said this, and I thought to myself, well, if the Treaty of Waitangi Tribunal is saying this, why is there a Treaty of Waitangi Tribunal? Because there should be no Treaty of Waitangi then, because there was no sovereignty ceded.
Yes.
In a story.
That's a very good point.
You know, it's a fact that we don't need you.
There's an implicit acceptance if they've taken money from the
just
Treaty
like
of
that,
Waitangi
yes.
Tribunal.
Yeah.
What about this though, Māori ceded sovereignty to the Crown because for years before 1840 they wanted law and order
That's
in
true.
this country. Tell me more about that.
Well,
And you say no matter how much the cultural Marxists want to try and rewrite history, that Māori wanted law.
The worst violence was going on from Ngāpuhi, and also violence from Ngāpuhi heading down south to Auckland, Rotorua, and places like that. There was mayhem going on.
Violence of Māori to Māori.
Oh yeah, well, there was no doubt about it.
Yes.
And all that's there, all historically true. Look, there's a book, or not, like a novel, but it's a true book, so to speak, not a novel, called Married and Gone to Live in New Zealand. It's written by a young woman who came to live here in the 1820s. And you want to read it because it's so fearful. The thumping of Maori men running, right, sometimes at night or in the morning, heading to somewhere. What for? For utu and war. It's always there. All that was studied clearly in the history leading up to 1840, and then you get these people saying it was imposed upon them. Stop lying. Some of us know. I'm from Ngāti. Ngāti means people of the sea. It's from the Great Barrier up to Whangarei Heads, all the way up to Rāwhiri in the Bay of Islands, all on the coast. Ngāti, people of the sea, so to speak. So stop lying to us that we don't know what we're talking about. And some of us have been engaged in great Maori land cases going back a long time ago, into the 70s when we won hugely, defending the Maori right and some Europeans as well. And a lot of these young people know nothing about that and have got the audacity to think that somehow they know more about it or have done more than you. It's unbelievable. Breathtaking.
Chloe Swarbrick springs to mind, the arrogance of that. But you know, that is so significant. I remember hearing that Māori were some of the most brilliant indigenous peoples. When the invaders came, they were such quick adapters, so agile. They quickly worked out, oh, we need those things that point and fire. So we will give blankets, we'll give kumara, we'll give food, but we want those to equalize the relationship. Well,
they call it the word is acquisitive.
Yes.
Maori were extraordinarily acquisitive, and that's why they adapted with so much speed, because rather than being against progress, they thought, that is devastating, that's far more effective than what I've got, and so they wanted it.
They wanted it, and equally one could argue then, according to you, with law and order, they saw that'll be good for us, that'll settle the internecine challenges that we have.
They knew they couldn't go on that way.
That's really significant, that perspective. So how do you deal with the wokesters who will howl you down and say, you racist, you, of course you're in an ideal position.
Well, I suppose you respond by saying, stop lying to your students.
That's brilliant.
No?
Thank you. And it is this about co-governance. In arguing partnership, they mean 50-50, even though the mass majority who claim to be Māori and who claim to be speaking on behalf of all Māori are not even half Māori themselves. This is what you say in your speech.
That's a fact.
We are all a mixture. By the 1975 Electoral Act, the definition of a Māori, tell us about that. That's half Māori or more in 1975.
Well, all the way till from 1867, when the first Māori seats came, until it was cleared up a bit more clear later, but all the way to 1975, to be on the Māori roll, you had to prove you were half Māori or more. And then Matt Ryder and the Labour Party in 1975 changed that law to say you can be on the Māori roll if you can recite an ancestor who's a Māori. Now, you know what that could be most diluted? 1 part in 512. See what I mean? How does that mean have any credibility? And in all these names, you get people shouting, we're 14%, we're 16%, and I'm saying to you, look, I'm from the background. I spent all my life in a Maori school and going forward in that context. Don't bulldust me. It's not true.
So what is the answer, Winston? How do we
Well,
get
yeah,
past
well,
this being used as another way to divide Kiwis, and not just Pakeha and Māori, but very elite, you know, the brown mafia, they're calling it, from the Māori people who are, it's not trickling down within Māori people.
I tell you who's going to derail this thing. Working class, ordinary, poor off Maori are going to derail this rubbish, because they know that these people are not speaking for them. They know that the last thing they're concerned about is their concerns and their poverty and their fundamental needs of housing, education, decent medicine and first world educations. That's who's going to derail this in the end. You stand back and watch.
The best example was when I was involved with Pania Newton, with Ihu Mātau, well before she stood up. But what was fascinating was a few elite within that iwi had the chance to get, I think, $3 or $4 million homes. And they were selling out the rest of the iwi, and it was the women who said, not one more acre, not one more. We will stop this. And it's not trickling down. That can be writ large with the Willie Jacksons and John Tamaheri, who was at law school when I was there. They're so privileged. But are they sharing it with all of those working class?
Well, guess where they got all their money all their lives?
The government.
From the taxpayer. Now, you could accuse a politician of doing that, but that's not true. We had to go on the line, contest our job every 3 years. Not these other people, so don't throw that allegation. And also, we were part of a very successful law practice, and that's what really matters.
I want to quote this final paragraph, really, or coming towards the end. New Zealand, you write, is the beneficiary. Actually, let's get you to read it. I'd like that paragraph. You to read here.
New Zealand is the beneficiary of Western values, democracy and the rule of law, and the advancement and enhancement of those principles have only occurred in those societies that have united together as one people and who celebrate their nationhood instead of perpetuating division. With cooperation, conciliation, inclusivity and teamwork, our country can make it out of this crisis to a better future for every New Zealander. We can become, again, just add in some words, in two great times in our history, it was a fact, we can become again the envy of the world.
Could we get enough small parties to replace Labour and National? I don't believe in either of them, and I don't believe in the Greens, and I don't believe in ACT. What I would love to see is you and a number of small parties being able to ally. I've said many times I think Labour should never be in government again. They've betrayed the people of New Zealand. Could we get that, where enough voters who are disillusioned now say, okay, let's all go for the small ones and see what they can do? Would you be willing for that?
Look, there are a whole lot of people out there who are talking about starting a new party. And how many parties have we seen over the years? Tens and tens and tens of political parties all starting and all dying. If you know anything about how hard it is to start a political party, what work it requires and what planning and what the quality of people, and to be nationwide, then the proposal wouldn't be put, if I might say it without criticising anybody, so lightly. It is not easy. And New Zealand First is off and running, the most successful third party in this country's history. If you take the Labour Party was formed in 1916, the National Party was formed in 1936. Then the party that's had the most success of all those parties, of all new parties, is New Zealand First. And we're going to be back again. And not to call this a racist thing, we'll be paddling our own canoe or our own waka, all right?
I wanted to ask you about that too. You're saying you will not have all this renaming of everything in Māori.
Well, it's just so farcical when we all know, and we spend so much money on education and public relations and advertising, where communications is understanding, and all of a sudden you've got all these names for government departments and government programs, and 95% of the country can't understand what it's about. And on some of them, even Māori experts can't understand what the word is.
It's why did they do it? It's a virtue signalling.
Virtue signalling, hand-wringing. Virtue signalling, hand-wringing. We're doing something for you. It's like I say, they changed the Māori health system to Te Whata Ora. whilst they don't get Maori an operation when they get there sick.
I can only think of changing the deck chairs on the Titanic as it sinks.
Yeah.
This is the hardest question probably of the whole interview, Winston. And there's a little lead up to this. When I was assaulted, Sean Plunkett, who I worked with down in Avalon on the same floor, never particularly admired his blustery ways. He contacted me over and over, would you come on? And I wrote and said, Sean, trust is earned. And there are two words that mean there's a cloud of darkness in front of you on trust. And these words are Brenton Faithful. He's the funeral director who had the courage to speak out and whom Sean absolutely derided, cut short, wouldn't allow him to tell what he was seeing. Now, what I was doing there, but Sean wasn't smart enough to recognise, I was giving him two ropes, either the tawdry rope of taking the cheap shots or the higher road of saying, look, I'm sorry, Brenton, and yes, Liz, I will read out your statement with dignity. What he did was read the statement I sent him in an absolutely, desultory way, eye-rolling. My words were very powerful and from the heart, and he got a lot of bad flack for that. There are two words that go in front of you, Winston, as much as I admire you, and I cannot escape this question. Jacinda Ardern, voting to go with her. If you could say, I regret it and I'm sorry, and I can't put words in your mouth, people would honestly, I think, cheer at the end of this interview. Could you say it, looking at what she's done to ruin our country, betray us, hurt us, and then bugger off with no results so far, no repercussions for a woman who has done such damage to a country? Could you say in this?
Well, that's a long question, Liz. I'm going to cut it short
Could
right
you
now.
say-
I know where you're trying to go.
I'm sorry.
But you need to know the circumstances of what I was dealing with. At the very first meeting I had with Bill English in 2017, not her, not Jacinda, but Bill English, he says to me, she says she's got the numbers, but she hasn't. He's telling me that there's a coup on against him being led by Judith Collins. You all know it. And the second thing is, for 3 years, we had such a successful government that they cheatingly lied and said that they did all the things. They took all the credit and they got all the votes, and New Zealand First was voted out. And since we've gone, it's been an abject disaster.
It has.
Now, 440,000 national voters went in 2020 from national to vote for Jacinda Ardern and Labour. Please don't try and blame me. I'm onto the facts on this.
Do you regret? Do you regret going with Jacinda?
Well, you're not seeing what I'm trying to tell you. When Bill English said that to me, there could be a spill on, I shook Jim Bolger's hands many years before to form a government with him, even though he'd sacked me twice. I put aside my animosity and thought this country needs a government. And I shook hands with him, and he will tell you this himself, that there was being organised under him by a person not remotely competent called Shipley, a coup to get rid of Bolger. So I'm shaking hands with the wrong person. You get my point here?
It's Shakespearean.
So don't tell me that I've got some reason to apologise or to feel sorry for. I was faced with circumstances, and having shared them with my colleagues, we all unanimously believed that was the only option we had.
Well, I can respect that you stand by your view, and that is what democracy is about. I may not agree with it, but Winston, I will die on a hill for your right to have it. For my part, I would say I had no option, I felt at the time, but I deeply regret it. That's what I would say, and I deeply respect your right to have your perspective on that.
You can only say that, I might add, with any quality or any meaning, if you could tell me what the alternative would have been with a coup and a new leader, Prime Minister, in the name of Judith Collins. If you could know that I wouldn't regret that, then you would be able to make a judgment. But I have been too experienced, too long in the woods, and too long in the battle, and too long in the ears as an elephant out there in the sun on some sunny morning is not there old and wise because he's been stupid. And I've been through this experience, and no one's going to nail me on it. What they're trying to tell me is that if they'd been there, they'd done something else. Really? When you asked the question, you didn't know the circumstance I just told you.
Winston, if you don't make it in politics, you'd make an excellent lawyer. That's a very good argument.
I was a lawyer.
I know you were. And you're right. Would Judith Collins have been any better, or would she have been worse?
Well, there you go.
We absolutely
That's what you don't know.
That. Thank you, Winston, and thank you for taking it all on. An excellent
Thank you very much.
speech. People can look it up. It's from Howick, and it's from the 24th of February, and we'll link that underneath. It's been a delight, Winston. I've really
Well, that's why I call it the real State of the Nation, because the National Party Act and everybody else had made this State of the Nation speech, but they didn't even have the figures of the 15th of March of the State of the Nation. That's why we left it till when we had them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful.